Well, good afternoon. It's good to be with all of you today. I'm John Ball, along with my business partner, Lisa Goyette. We own CH Training and Coaching. We specialize in organizational development with an emphasis on social emotional intelligence. We really come in and help create healthy, productive, engaging work environments. And we have the privilege today, as we talk about not only what we do through coaching and training and assessments and all of the dynamics that come into creating a healthy work environment, we have the privilege of having James Reid IV with us today. He's a business attorney, a partner at Dinsmore, and we're excited to have an engaging conversation about the unique climate and culture that we're living in right now, and how that relates to your field, James, as you provide legal services to businesses and representation, not only in just the ordinary times, but especially in these out of the ordinary moments that we're living in.
Well, thank you, John. I'm excited to be here, and I guess I want to start with the elephant in the room. The pressure is off. James McGregor Reid V is at home. He's my 7-year-old son, so
Wow.
no worries there. And the legal times right now are very challenging because a lot of people are experiencing new issues. And I think if you're just sticking to your old business plan from a decade ago, or sticking to your training from a decade ago, you're missing on a lot of the key signals on what you need to know to adapt and be able to thrive under this environment. And I come at it from the legal side, where every employee is suffering what I call the cumulative effects of what's going on in the world, whether it's COVID related and Black Lives Matter and LGBTQ and the political environment. And everyone has their own personal challenges with homeschooling. Over 300,000 women are no longer employed because they need to be with their children to help them through the school process. So there are a lot of factors that are taking the toll on everybody of every protected class, regardless if you have any specific strong issue in any one individually. All of them added together are draining. And I think, as I mentioned, there's a lot of HR statistics. We were lucky to have Johnny Taylor, the president of SHRM, identify that there were hundreds of thousands of unemployed women. There are 300% increase in suicide rates. And a lot of this has to do also with working at home and being remote and alone and not getting that social water cooler interaction. And I think that what managers don't see, and sometimes HR, is that you can't solve these problems alone. You need to, more so than ever, create a committee that has ideally diversity, different points of view. When I say diversity, I don't just mean race and gender, different points of view and styles to spot the issues and identify a solution together that's taking in different expertise. You might also bring in IT, you may bring in the CFO. We should all be part of the solution together. And I think the silos are being brought down is a positive I'm seeing. And I think leaders are being more open and vulnerable, where they're also sharing about their challenges and depression and not always being Superman to everybody, when we all know you can't be Superman all the time.
That's really refreshing to hear. It's always good for John and I when we go into a corporate environment. We always look to the leaders first, right? To be the ones that set the tone for how business is conducted. And because we look through and live with a lens of creating social and emotional intelligence, we know that that has to start with the leadership team. So it's modeled efficiently for the rest of the business organization to see what they need to do. So when we're talking about, like you said, the cumulative effect right now,
Yes.
James, there are so many things going on that absolutely have a significant effect on every single one of us. And we call it the elephant in the room, that there's so many things that aren't being discussed that are having a significant impact and that are bringing, that are coming into our places of work. So, for example, every single one of us has a very strong opinion on how we think COVID should be managed, right? Do we wear masks? Don't we wear masks? Do we believe it? Don't we believe it? What do we feel about the partisan divide? All of these things, whether or not they're being spoken, are coming into our places of employment. And we are seeing that some work environments are saying, you know what, we're going to hit this head on. We're going to open up the dialogue. We're going to create a safe place where we're going to set some ground rules and we're going to start having discussion. And then we see other organizations that they're fearful, and for many good reasons, because they're afraid that if they say the wrong thing, they may get hit with a lawsuit, or someone says something that they're not sure how to respond. So can you, I guess, share a little bit about what you have been experiencing as the last really 10, 12 months have been unfolding relative to kind of all of this stuff?
No, it's great. A great question. So one, you're right. I think certain trainers out there scare the executives too much, where they think they need to be fake and basically keep their eyes to themselves and just do their job and keep work, solely work, and not even, ask, how are you, or comment, nice outfit today, or how are you doing? Because you can't know anything, because now you're accused of discriminating against them. That is not my advice. My advice is now, so more than ever, to be a good leader, you need to get your team motivated and let them know that you care about them. People first. If it's profits first, your business isn't going to thrive too much longer. You're not going to have that loyalty. So people leave, I'm sure you preach, bad managers, right? So what we need to do is have that relationship with our team, but do it in a way where we're aware of what issues would be crossing the line. So a lot of managers don't even know the protected classes in Michigan. If I did a poll right now, or even on, when we air this, how many people know height and weight and marital status or family status or misdemeanor arrest records, any of those are protected classes? My guess is much less than 50%.
Wow. Yeah.
And how many people have said jokes about height or weight or marital status or family status in the workplace? Probably a majority as well. So I think if you're going to have that type of activity in the workplace, you do not want to be the sole person that terminates somebody that's in a protected class when you've made those comments. Instead, more than ever, we need to break down the silos and have a committee, such as neutral parties. Maybe it's an HR consultant or a lawyer or a diverse, internal executive board that evaluates performance. Let's not focus on people's challenges. We all have challenges. Let's focus on performance and are people violating our policies or our performance, and take best practices. But I think the challenge is that a lot of employees think that they have entitlements under the law that they are wrong about. So for example, most people think they can talk politics in the workplace, or that they can share free speech. There's no such thing as First Amendment free speech in private employment. So, and there's no such thing as off-duty privacy in Michigan or in many states. California is its own country, from my eyes, for the most part. We have an office there that I always consult with on any of those issues. But my point is, if somebody is embarrassing the brand off duty, that could impact the image of the company.
Yes.
And if they're posting something on social media, a lot of people are finding out where they work, checking them on LinkedIn or Facebook, and then contacting the employer and saying, do you know you have employees that engage in hate speech or inappropriate activity? What are you going to do about it? So there's a lot of branding. Social media, I guess, is taking over more than normal on how to operate a healthy workplace. And I think you have to be aware 24/7 on how to spot these issues and ideally resolve them before there is a major issue. And
So,
I also think most managers hear a comment or complaint and they think they're adding value by being a sympathetic ear or empathetic ear, but they're not reporting that issue to HR to solve the problem. Maybe they're complaining this manager is a bad person or a bully or mean, and that person says, sorry, you had a rough day, I wish you well. Are we providing training and stopping that manager from doing it again? And also employees are claiming, oh, my boss is a bully, he's discriminating against me. Well, they're not lawyers, they don't know the power of those words and what they actually mean. If the boss is, equally challenging, a tough coach on everybody, it's not a legal discrimination because of any protected class. It might just not be best practices on how to get the most out of that individual, because we all have different strengths and react. And there's 5 different generations in the workplace. So we have different styles on how to maximize our opportunities.
I really, there's a number of things that are really resonating with me, and a lot of the language and the message that we send, you're speaking directly to. I, in so many words, have heard you say in my own vernacular of learning to bring down the silos is really about the humanization of the workplace, of the work environment, of making it into a work environment where there's now that relational fabric that's taking place. And what really resonated with me in that regard was the creation of a task force, a committee, an initiative to be not passive, but be in a place where it's in the driver's seat to really work through some of these more challenging issues that we're facing in the environment. And we of course have talked about that extensively since the onset of COVID, as companies were preparing for PPE and putting those measures into place. We've been saying all along, what about the social, the emotional, the psychological component of the impact of COVID, and how as much as a company is putting energy and time into preventative measures to keep their workforce safe, what are companies doing to help the emotional and psychological impact that this has had upon them as a result of the cumulative effect that you and Lisa have mentioned already. And so that becomes a point of solution, as companies will ask us, well, what are we supposed to do in the midst of this? So can you give us some ideas in that spirit of how that would look like as those initiatives, that task force, that committee is rolled out?
Yeah, so one, I think companies should look to see if they have an EAP program, an employee assistance program, or a wellness program. And a lot of HR professionals that I speak with tell me that they're suffering from depression and they're actually using their own wellness program for the first time. And they're actually being more comfortable about sharing their vulnerabilities. Even I'm seeing them share it on Facebook or LinkedIn. Yes. Which I think then has a positive waterfall effect where other employees are also comfortable asking for help or identifying their challenges. And you're not all feeling the need to always be invincible and above, living the perfect life, and you're always the perfect leader, always, in control. Everyone has weaknesses and breakdowns, and everyone should be in this together and know when to ask for help.
Excellent.
So I'm seeing a revisit of our policies. I'm seing training on how to spot issues with our workplace earlier so we can accommodate employees. If we break it down, many employees have a disability, even if they don't realize it. It doesn't mean you have to have that, parking sticker on your car to be a disabled individual. Maybe if you're suffering severe stress or severe anxiety or depression, and maybe it's temporary. Maybe you aren't this way all the time, but the cumulative effects are putting you in that slump right now. We as professionals and leaders need to spot these issues in our workforce and see if there's a way to reasonably accommodate our employees and be there for them and accommodate them through these times, as long as it doesn't impose an undue hardship on the company.
James, when you were speaking to marginalized classes of populations in the workforce, I kind of go to the civil rights, Elliott Larson civil rights in our state. How do you think Michigan fares in comparison to other states relative to providing robust protection for marginalized populations?
So Michigan is the only state I'm aware of that specifically protects height. And, I'm not aware of any other state protects weight, maybe California, but and then marital status and family status and misdemeanor arrest record are all relatively unique, although different states like Indiana protects tobacco users because they have a lot of tobacco crop.
Yeah.
So there are some states have certain privacy protection laws, but I would say that Michigan is actually better than most at having individual protections. However, it's a little bit harder in Michigan to prove your case than it is at a federal level. So certain disabilities are not as recognized under Michigan law as they would be under federal law. So just be aware of that distinction. A lot of judges in Michigan are more pro-business and find ways to interpret it in ways of allowing employers to continue wanting to be attracted to Michigan.
Wow.
Okay.
Than other states.
Okay.
Excellent. Now that's good. And so what we've also been saying all along as we've been having this conversation and really helping organizations, businesses to find a place of health is really be putting themselves in a proactive place of having conversations with individuals like yourself, with legal representation, as well as organizational specialists like us that can help formulate that discussion and help them find their way forward, as these are unprecedented times. And one of the things that we continue to be bewildered by is we hear the language, well, this is eventually going to go away. The virus is going to have a vaccine and things are going to go back to normal. Well, can you speak to your own sense on where that's going, James?
Yeah, we at Dinsmore have already decided to only try to have 80% commercial space occupied going forward, because we know at a minimum, there'll be at least 20% of the workforce that are going to want to continue their remote workplace. And I think there are some permanent changes. Those managers that used to feel the need to micromanage every second of the day of an employee, now we're able to build trust. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that person's thriving. The results have never been better. I'm letting them work their own schedule that isn't just 9 to 5, and they're getting more done than ever. And they don't need me over their back, micromanaging their every move. So I think our leadership styles are changing, our ability to work remotely are changing. And I think that, being prepared for a pandemic will happen again. So I think lessons learned, let's continue to be prepared for the next one. And I think that we're basically seeing the ROI on the value of people like you, that if you provide this training, people don't understand the return on investment right away. If they pay a certain fee, they're not necessarily going to make that much more money that same month. But by reducing turnover, having more loyal employees, more energized employees, you could increase production. I've seen studies by as high as 50% having an engaged employee that knows you're there for them. And likewise, I think that because of that, companies are going to wish they had more training, because if there's ever a lawsuit or a complaint, the first question an investigator would have is, what training did you provide your employees, and how are you helping the employees continue to grow and not giving them a dead path as to where they're at. So I think there are a lot of changes, a lot of positive takeaways,
Yes.
and it's not going to flip back to how it was ever again.
That's kind of a nice way to kind of bring this all home. You know, as we've processed all of this, what's been happening, we're always stepping back saying, okay, what are the good things that we can take out of this that we know will help cement positive, sustainable impacts as we move forward. And we believe, with kind of to tack onto your comment, that you know, one of the things is that the focus is going to help shift towards it. We have to realize that we are people-centered organizations first. And if we put our focus on that, whatever industry we are in, if we're a manufacturing industry or we're a service industry, that comes second, but we focus on our people first. And then we know that we can make a superior product, or we can provide superior service, but we've got to put our focus on our employees. And we see that as kind of a shift that is kind of happening naturally throughout this, as people are connecting in ways that they probably haven't done so in a long time, if not maybe ever.
And it's definitely, I think, in that terms, as you put that, Lisa, one of the things that we saw even before COVID is that progression, that tsunami that we were calling it, was already taking place because of the generational shift around millennial and Z generation that's coming up. And by the natural experience of the pandemic, is it just accelerated that progression even quicker, to really require businesses to start asking these questions around what is the workplace supposed to look like? What should it look like, so that it's addressing some of the things that you're speaking of?
No, I think that's absolutely a major factor. Is the next generation is more active on social media or public movements than ever before, and employers are catching up to what the social norms have already adopted.
Yeah.
Well, any closing thoughts for us, James, as we bring this to a conclusion of maybe some thoughts that we haven't covered or things that need to be accentuated even more so?
Yeah, I think the best way to summarize everything is just with the word trust. And I think that if you want to build trust, you want to be an employer that follows the law. And so you need to be able to be legally compliant in your handbook and know how to follow the law with COVID plans and necessary mandatory training, which is required in Michigan. And once you have your legal compliance that builds some level of trust, you need to have your people first mentality, where they know that you're not just in it for a widget to make a profit. You're caring about supporting the people and growing the culture within your organizations. And I think that if we could see, the trust number over everyone's head from 0 to 100, and we're all at 100, we wouldn't need anybody. Most people that file a lawsuit are because they don't trust somebody and they think they're really discriminating against them, when maybe they weren't. That was just a perception based on lack of trust. And likewise, some people leave because they think their managers, working against them instead of trying to grow together. So trust is my closing thought.
Gosh, what?
Love that.
Go ahead.
No, I love that. And, trust it's one of the 26 pillars of social and emotional intelligence, having people with strong integrity that are going to do the right thing. And, when you have a work environment that is built on a foundation of trust is a non-negotiable here. You will always have an ROI, always. I love that.
Well, we get totally geeked about these conversations, and rightfully so, James, because there are, on a very personal note and professional note, is sometimes we feel like, not to make our voice exceptional by any stretch of the imagination, but sometimes we feel like we're the only voice in the wilderness that's speaking this message. And so being able to connect with people like yourself, that's talking about the human-centric component of businesses and organizations, of reassessing how we interact with our employees and the workplace and the culture and the environment, and where that shift needs to take place, is so very refreshing, not just to save oneself legally, right, from litigation, but for doing it for the right ethical reasons, because we are a human world and it's important to treat each other in a just and fair way. So if you would like more information, and I am going to include this in the post with this video, you can get a hold of James Reid at dinsmore.com. His email is james.reid, R-E-I-D, at Dinsmore, D-I-N-S-M-O-R.com. James.reid at dinsmore.com for more information. And then, of course, you can also look up our information and what we are about at www.chtrainingandcoaching.com, chtrainingandcoaching.com. And even though we're living in two separate worlds, we're living on the same street in many different ways, James. So thank you for being a partner with us as we continue together to try to change the culture of the corporate and the work environment that employees are a part of.
Thank you for having me. We'll do it again.
Yes.
For sure. Thank you so much.